Okay, I got it included. You ready, Todd? Yeah, I got it. Yeah, you're good. All right. All right. Welcome to Noonie TV. And today on the show, we have Todd. Yeah. Welcome, Todd. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks for asking.
Oh, nice, nice. So, there are many things to talk about. Let's get started. Yeah. So, first topic I wanted to talk about is the rise and fall of the heavy attack builds, the Sork heavy attack builds. So, as you may know, the Arcanist came out. As the Arcanist came out, you see a lot of before you will see people in trials just you doing Sorks on heavy attack builds, but now they're like kind of extinct. Why do you think that happened, Todd?
I think because the two-hand players complained that they could bring it into trials, and they were getting frustrated because they put all this time into making their tune perfected, and it just got taken over by heavy attack orcs.
Yeah, that is true. That it definitely is true. I know there were many people who were really furious when the heavy attacks builds came out, but there to this day there's a lot of people who till this day don't even know how to use a heavy attack sword or never ever used a heavy attack sword. How about you, Todd? Have you ever used a heavy attack sword?
I have, yes. Do I prefer
And
using
what do
them?
you
Not really. I prefer a two-hand.
uh and do you like them? Do you thought they were good? Do you saw any pros and cons?
In terms of accessibility, there's definitely a pro there, but in terms of the damage they were hitting, compared to a heavy attack or a two-hand, no, not a fan.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I will say this: the thing about heavy attack, because I wasn't a big fan of heavy attack at all. It's not until I experimented with. I hated it actually, to be honest with you. I hated it with all my guts and glory. I mean, I thought it was stupid. I literally even told Shadow like, hey, like this is ridiculous. Like it's cheesy. No one's gonna learn how to parse properly. It's not until I started seeing I went on YouTube and I started seeing all these content creators and everyone just using heavy attacks and beating hard modes and speed runs, and I was like, but why would they want to do this when you have a two bar? Two bar is just the way to go. I took it to Maelstrom Arena, and once I tested it, I realized that even though it doesn't hit 100 or 100, I mean very hard numbers, it caps about 80 right now, but the cool thing was just consistent damage at the time because it was AoE damage. Now it's garbage because you saw what they did to the lightning attack. What do you think you how do you feel about what they did to lightning staff now? Remember it used to be AoE and now it's just straight single. Do you think they made it into garbage for a heavy attack?
I think they fixed it the game because too many people are complaining about the heavy attack.
Yeah, that's what I think they probably did that. But another thing too, I had an idea. I think that the reason like they slowly but surely destroyed the Sork. And I think the main reason why they did that is for they were getting ready to do the Arcanist for the new. Remember when the Arcanist first came out, and there was a lot of rave and new DLC. So I think that was the preparation for that, and that's when the Sork declined. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, in terms of state of the game, the Arcanist is definitely overpowered.
Oh, indeed. I mean, there's every end game team wants a arc. I will say DPS is just mandatory. I mean, it's so easy, so fun. Yeah, what do you think about the Arcanist, Todd? Have you made one yet?
I haven't made one now.
Uh, are you planning to make one or?
No, I think I want to stick with my Warden and DK.
I see. Well, I know you do very good in the support warden, and you also like it. You've been working on your warden for a very long time. With different builds and stuff. But so I know you've been having fun with that. But I know the Arcanist. Oh my God, it's so overpowered. Eventually they're gonna nerf it one day. You just know it's gonna come.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And in your opinion, what do you think makes the Arcanist so good?
The lack of having to light attack.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that, so for example, I have a night blade and I do double staff on my night blade, and I get a high parse over 100, and I do double staff, which everyone knows that double staff does not hit the hardest. You either want to go two-handed or you want to go dual with staff. What do you think? Do you like double staff or not really?
For my build, I have to use double staffed. It's just because of what I supply to the group. But other than that, I also use two dagger staff, and I can't switch if needed. Go two and a dagger. So I
Oh
really
yeah,
have
me
no
too.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean the problem is damage is just so high right now that um, even double staff. I mean you're gonna, you have people hitting 120s with double staff because it's just damage is so hard hitting right now. Um, not hard to hit 100 as years ago, where 100 really meant something. I mean, it still does, of course, because obviously you're fluent in your hitting, but years ago it was just so much harder. Um, I will say this that the oh, I had a brain freeze. So what I was gonna say? What were we talking about again, Weetad? That we got into this numbers.
We are talking about Arcanus and how they're
Yeah,
hitting
the
high.
Arcanist. Oh yeah, how they're hitting. So, oh yes, yes. So piggyback on the Arcanist. Yeah, basically what I was trying to say was that um on my Nightblade I do double staff, but with the Arcanist I was doing double staff, but I automatically went to dual and staff because they're just hitting so hard, and dual you hit a little bit harder. The crazy thing is that I was worried because I was like, well, you know, if you're gonna do the laser, right, I'm gonna miss some light attacks. But the crazy thing with the Arcanist is that you don't have to be you could be terrible at light attacking and still get a good number. Um, and that's because of the Velati Mythic. Have you tried the Velati Mythic?
Yeah, I've tried it. Yes,
Uh, do you have that on your Warden, or like how do you like it?
it's good for some tunes like say Templar or Arc, but the Warden no.
I see. Yeah, the Warden has a lot of ice passes, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have some pretty good
especially
passes.
especially a Meg Warden, it runs off ice passives.
I see. Yeah, yeah, indeed. So, the Velat, like in your case with the Ice Warden. I mean, I call it Ice Warden, but the Warden. Um, what is your go-to? Like, what is something you like from the Warden that it's different or special compared to any other class?
Hitting extremely high numbers using a Frost Staff as your main weapon.
I see. Oh yes, because right now, what is the meta right now? It's Flame Staff with dual wield. No, it's a matter or two-handed. I mean, it changes so much, but with the Warden, you can go Ice Staff, correct?
Yes, the main staff you run is the Ice Staff from Dragonstar Arena.
Dragonstar Arena. Oh, Dragonstar Arena brings a lot of memories. Yeah, but like I said, damage is so different now. Dragonstar Arena used to mean something back then. How do you feel Dragonstar Arena is now? Do you feel it's easy, different, challenging?
I wouldn't say it's challenging per se. It's more of a mental challenge in terms of having to deal with the dialogue that is constant in that dungeon or arena. Apologies.
Ah, in other words, you want to get the hell out of there, but you got to spend 20 minutes just hearing them talk and talk and talk before you can even get to the. And then there's so many stage one, stage two. So that's the mental you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it takes
Yeah,
like 5 minutes just to start the first wave of the next round.
yeah. By then we're already like just like waiting for the show to keep going. I still have to go back in there. I mean, I believe I got almost all the pieces, but I might be missing like one piece. Don't even remember what it is. And it's just to get perfected, to be honest. Like one little piece of something. I don't know if it was a staff or ball. Yeah, and the Sorks. So people were doing hard mode speed runs, no deaths. I mean, you have people doing trifectas with that. I remember there was a lot of another thing too with the nerf. Like I said, I came out where at first I hated the Sork. I didn't give it a chance, but once I experimented and tested it, I realized how good it was. But at the end of the day, I felt like it was a training wheel for beginners. I think what made the endgame community so pissed off with it was that you had a guy who was terrible at parsing, and then you had a guy who's been 7 years parsing, working on his craft, getting his class really good, and they're both in trials together. And when they found out, like, hey, that other guy has a heavy tag, they would like criticize him or joke him or harass him. Yeah, what do you think about that, Todd?
Um, yeah, it definitely is a deterrent for people that spend years and years parsing just to get the number they're at, and then you just come on a heavy attack Sork, hit one button, and be hitting 100k. It definitely frustrates the heck out of people that spend time and hours to perfect their build.
So, if you were like, let's say a casual trial of people learning how to do endgame, um, will you be more, will you be more okay with someone coming into trial, because it's a learning guild, where if there are heavy attacks, you will be okay with that, or do you feel that they should just learn how to parse from the very beginning and forget about the heavy attack?
I'm actually okay with it, to be honest. Like I said, it's definitely very helpful for people with mobility issues in terms of like not having to constantly move your hands to input and keep up a dynamic rotation. But
Yeah, I agree with
in terms of like hard mode, no, I prefer two hands.
two hands. Yeah, I will say, it's very difficult to nowadays to be like, hey, to tell someone like, hey, you would, unless people experienced it, but like a new player, who's not been so long in the game, who's in end game, to tell them the story of how people used to clear hard modes with heavy attack, because they would be like, no way, because right now there's no cleave on the Sork. It's just single damage. But yeah, people actually did it with 80 consistent 80k. I will say this, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I believe it's a good training wheel, because like you said, people with disabilities, people who are not capable, it gives them a competitive chance to be an end game, but it's not like they're gonna ever be better than you, but they can at least be your teammate and you'll be fine, because they're on something they're capable of. The only problem I did have, and this was happening a lot, because it even happened to us at the early seasons, in the garage team, where we started getting people recruiting people, and one of the biggest problems we had was that you have players who spent such a long time on heavy tech that they wouldn't want to parse, because they're like, why, if I can just do the one bar button. So, and you also have a lot of people too who they'll make excuse, like they'll be like, oh, I can't because my hand hurts, or I'm disabled. So yeah, it is very true that there are people who are not capable, but I think most people are lazy, and will use it as an excuse. What do you think, Todd?
Yeah, I agree with you on that part.
Yeah, I seen quite a few people who they'll be like, they wouldn't even give it a chance. They'll be like, oh, I tried it, but it wasn't, and they'll make some excuse, and I'll be like, I even had people who would not even want to parse on a heavy attack because they say that their finger will hurt on a one button. So you can imagine, yeah, it's pretty chaotic. And I did read forums years ago. Well, not years ago. It was like probably like a year ago, a few months ago. Forums about people creaming each other of the heavy attack Sork and stuff. And yeah, you used to get a lot of people that they would say that they're disabled, or you would get people who would be like, oh, they're lazy, you know. And like I said, there are people who are, you know, for example. But here's another thing too. Like, let's say my brother doesn't play Elder Scroll, so the cool thing about the heavy attack, you know, I know you don't like the heavy attack, is that let's say you have a brother or a friend who's never played Elder Scroll and you want to bring them into endgame. If they're dedicated, you know, at the beginning they could do a heavy attack, and as they get better and as they get their gear, the proper gear, they can start working on their two bar little by little. What do you think, Todd?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a good beginner build in terms of that instance, but you gotta work into harder content.
Oh yeah, but even now, I mean, I think with the Sork, now thinking about it, piggyback on what I was saying, I also think that the problem now too is that I think I'll probably just forget about the Sork because with the Arcanists now, oh my god, like they're just so overpowered. Um I think right now, and as people start understanding the Arcanist better, they're gonna realize that the Arcanist is really like the heavy attack Sork. Is an easy build, of course, much more competitive, a little bit more learning curve than the Sork. But with the Sork being nerfed and to the ground, I mean, it's just better to go to two bar on a Sork. I feel that Arcanist is the new easy build. What do you think?
Yes, it's an
Yeah,
easy build, but there's a learning curve to it.
I agree to that. So you made a perfect statement about that. It's an easy build, but there is a learning curve. So I know when I first did the Arcanist, and I experimented it quite a while. Um, at the beginning, until you have the, especially us being doing so many years two bar, when you go into the Arcanist, it's not like any other class. So the learning curve of using the laser and not doing those light attack, you know, weave light attack skill, will get you kind of brain fart. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy breezy. It's a simple build. The cool thing is, like, you can get 70, 80k, 90k rather easily once you get the hang of it. I think when it becomes a harder is once you start hitting the hundreds. That's when it becomes a little bit more challenging as the Arcanist to hit those numbers. But from 70 to 80. And I was telling one of our teammates, we have one guy in the guild years about he's no longer plays. He had a Templar, a two bar Templar, and he was pretty terrible at parsing. So we tried to work on him, and he could only get 50k on his parse on a Templar. But then when the Arcanist came out, right, his first few times, right, he was able to get like 75, 76k. And how was that? Because it is a much more easy, friendlier build.
Yeah. Anything
Which
you want to work on, it's not gonna be straight out the bat. There's definitely a learning curve to any build you play, except for the heavy tax work. That's just a button.
yeah, that really is just about. But here's the fun part. So talk about that one button, and I know I keep talking about the damn heavy attack and heavy attack, but here's the fun part. Till this day, there are many people who don't know how to use a heavy attack Sark, right? And um, there's also you also get the group before during the heavy attack era. You get a lot of people too who have trouble with the heavy attack Sark, or they go into content, they be like, oh, I'm struggling with it, because they just never. So a person who's never parsed with a heavy attack Sark will not do very well in getting content, because they I seen people go on heavy attack Sarks, and for months and months, right, they would die, they didn't know how to survive, And I'm like, well, you gotta work on the parse. And then they go parse and they start light attacking with it. And that's how I know. I'm like, oh, you're not doing the heavy attack. Then when I tell them all you about pressing that one button, they're like, oh, it's like a mystery to them. Have you seen people like that?
I've seen people that think they're hitting high numbers based off what they damage. So yeah, I definitely.
All right, back in the game. Yeah. All right. So what were we talking about before I got cut off?
Honestly, I can't remember.
Oh, okay. All about the heavy attack, and then oh, they think they're doing good damage. So yeah, talking about thinking they're doing good damage. Here's a fun part. Um, so there are many people, and I remember year one, in our garage team. I remember that um, our guild leaders at the time, we didn't really want to. We're pretty lenient. We didn't really want to make everybody parse. I mean, yeah, we knew parsing was important, and we wanted people to parse, but we didn't want to make it mandatory. Um, the reason we made it mandatory was because people kept bullshitting us. Like everyone thought they were like the best players in Elder Scroll, and then reality hit them when they hit that parse, and they were hitting like only 15, 20k damage, and then they're like, oh, this is bullshit, and then they'll like either quit the game or be like, oh, the parse is just a number, or oh, I can do more in game content, or they would just like make excuses, but they swear they were the best players in Elder Scroll. Yeah, what do you think about that? Kind of funny.
Exactly. Like, no,
Oh,
exactly. Like, until you get that reality check of what you're actually hitting, people are just gonna excuse and say that they're hitting high numbers, but when you go to tell them, like, this is what you gotta do to make, to verify your number for game content, they would quit the game after they see that they're not doing what they think they're doing. It's definitely a big deterrent in terms of reality check, in terms of what they actually hit and compared to what they think they hit.
oh yeah, yeah. And have you ever hit that reality check?
No, I've seen it though. I
I
knew when I
see. And
first started that I wasn't hitting the numbers that I thought I was hitting. And it definitely took me a long time to get to where I am now.
yeah, a lot of work. I mean, came a long way. But I think we all came a long way as even as a team. I mean, I will say this: the player, everyone in the garage team, last season to this season, I mean, it's just a different team. And a lot of us have just been together for more than 2 seasons. Some people even 3 seasons. Um, it's just a different team. Everyone's hitting harder. Everyone's hitting numbers. I mean, everyone just developed in every way possible. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, it also helps that the game gives us all this damn damage. But I know for me, my reality check was, well, I used to be in cores, since like what 2014, 2015. Or it was around there when I started. I mean, I didn't start core to 2015. Probably I was new in the game, but maybe like I started my first core team in 2016. And I remember at the time, you if you were hitting like 60k, 65, you're pretty damn good. But the fun part was that so I had to, from there I was already parsing. I was already parsing, but what was the point? Oh yes, yes, I was already parsing. However, the reality check was when not so much the numbers, because at that time that was a high number, and I just got better. My numbers were decent. I wasn't going crazy on the parse, but it was decent. I think the reality check hit me that I could is that when you parse, you start realizing as your numbers go up and up that you also start becoming a better player, and in game content you start doing better too, where you realize like, wow, you really are not the damage dealer you thought you were. Like in your head, you're thinking you're like this really good player. Where in my case, I was very survivable. I knew mechanics, but my damage was lacking. And now that my damage is higher, you start seeing like, oh, okay, like there's always room for improvement. And that's where I got kind of the reality check. How about for you, Wita? Is it something similar or?
Yes, yeah. I originally started on a 2-bow build and was struggling to hit 75k. I eventually switched over to a DK, and my first couple of parses hit 80k. And that's when I realized I'm starting to get the hang of how to proper damage. And then I just kept practicing and practicing. And then, probably back in 21, I hit my first 90k.
Oh, nice. I know that must have been a good feeling.
Yeah.
I
The joy you
yeah, I know.
get from when you put all this effort in and finally see those numbers start to rise, and the time it takes to finish a boss tick down. It's definitely worth the amount of effort you put in to perfecting your craft.
Oh yeah, I know. For me, I got. I mean, and this we're talking about like 2000, maybe 16, 2017. For the longest, I was, even though our minimum requirement at the time, and this was a very sweaty core guild at the time, was like 60, 65k. Um, the highest hitter was probably hitting like 80 at the time, and that was like very few people can hit it. Very very few. And I remember I got stuck in like 60, 65k forever. But also consider that damage was so different then. I mean, nowadays you can get overland sets and probably hit 80k. Before, none of those overland sets you can. I mean, you would not hit not even 60k. It was just too hard. But the interesting thing was that that damage is high, and at the moment, and what I don't want people to be frowned on, because I do see it a lot in the forums, is that we you don't have to go crazy in the parse where everybody has to hit 120, 130k, but the purpose of the parse is to make people understand as a DPS, you're a damage dealer and you do need to practice. Everybody has different goals, but at least practice it. It is important. Like someone who is a DPS and doesn't parse, it's not a good DPS, and it's a harsh reality people gotta face. If you want to be a casual, be a casual, but it really is the truth. What do you think?
Exactly. This game has options for any kind of person of what you want to do. And that's probably one of the good things about Elder Scrolls is there's so much to do for whatever you want to do. But if you want to get into the harder content, you gotta put your time into it.
I agree. I agree. And then there's the other thing too, where yes, you're a damage dealer, yes, parse, but once you perfect that, a lot of people be like, hey, all right, that's it, I'm the best. No, on the contrary, the journey just begins. Your damage is good, but now you gotta make that happen in game content. And now in game content, you're on a parse. In a parse, obviously you have no heals, your dummy isn't moving. But now you gotta go into game content, and it's a whole different story now, because now things are moving. You got to stay alive. You got to have some type of heal or shield, or even if you decide not to use a heal or shield. Let's say you want to perfect not using a heal or shield, um, because a lot of it comes for your passives. They can help you survive. Um, you got to learn mechanics. You got to learn awareness. You got to learn movement, and many people just think the damage part is everything, which is very important. And I highly encourage it because you're gonna have two people. You're gonna have someone who's gonna hit hard, but terrible at surviving and squishy, and you're gonna have someone who survives but terrible at damage. So this is where you get the imbalances. What do you think?
Yeah. Enough. The perfect damage dealer is one who can stay alive and hit the numbers that they hit on the purse. In terms of like game content though, you could be hitting 120, but if you can't stay alive, you're no use in a trial.
Oh yeah, I agree. One of the perfects, and I'm gonna say people's names because I like to keep them anonymous, but unless their permission. But we had one player about maybe last season or 2 seasons ago in the guild who didn't really want to parse, and this guy, he survived. He was much more mechanically savvy. I would guess he was probably hitting about 60k maybe, if he was to parse. But the thing is, him not, and here's the hard part, him not choosing to want to parse, even though he was a decent player. I mean, he had awareness, he survived. Which, one thing about that is that if you're hitting 120k and you're always on the floor, you're technically just doing zero damage. Where that guy who's hitting maybe 50, 60k is more constant than the guy who's zero in reality. But the problem with that guy hitting 50, 60k, well, he doesn't even parse. A person that don't parse. Here's the problem with that. That person may think they're good, and they're never gonna realize they could actually be better. And that's the problem with the whole not parsing type of thing.
Exactly. The best damage dealer you can be is when you can stay alive and when you can constantly put out your damage. A dead damage dealer, like you said, they're useless in content because they're not going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree to that. You know, and there are many things they can do, like 4-man arenas, solo arenas. There's to me, I think trials is the fun part, because trials is 12 men. Sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes people could just easily get carried, just hide behind someone's skirt. Um, it's the reality of it. I mean, us, me and you. I mean, we're not gonna be naive. We've been in many cores, and we can honestly say that there's people who even got trifectas, and we respect them because they got the trifecta. And it's not, a trifecta is not something that's easy to do, but well, I'm being a little far fetched. Not more trifecta, more like hard modes or speed runs. Trifecta is a little different, and yes, they're end gamers, but at the same time, we can honestly say like some of them really have no business being in those type of cores. Really, not at all. But they're persistent, and there is a shortage in Elder Scroll with end gamers. I mean, look at it this way: 75 to 85% of the population in Elder Scroll are casual players.